Right, look at the time.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jason Tucker, and this is WP Water Cooler episode number 272. That's right. I hit the record button hoping Steve would say something bad, and it didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
Yep. This particular episode, we're going to be talking about WordPress 4.9.6, which just came out yesterday, and we're going to go through some of the controversy behind it. But before we do that, we're going to go to Mr. Woodworker himself, George. George, you're starting sabbatical early, aren't you?
Just a little bit. No, I'm just randomly putzing with some wood.
No, that's how we're starting.
Making a box out of this.
I saw that. That should be the tagline for this show. Randomly futzing with our wood.
For those of you listening,
some wood, not
some wood.
On, don't make it dirty, man.
For those of you listening on your iPhone or your iTunes with not the picture, this is still family rated.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, I have it
just whittling
in front of me on my desk that I am tracing a line on that I'm about to cut.
We are family. We are a family adjacent show. All right, intros.
Yes, I work by Automatic by day on Jetpack and doing random stuff on Core and community organizing, and I'm about to disappear for 3 months because I get a sabbatical after 5 years. Yay! Bye! I get to go hide and ignore all of you.
Always good to have you on, George. Leo, we haven't seen you in a little bit. What's going on, man?
Hi, everyone. I am a WordPress person, thingy-majigger, just like all of us. I work for a company called XWP. I'm a WordPress consultant. I run a meetup down here in Long Beach. I am also a co-organizer for WordCamp Orange County, which comes up in a few weeks. There's still a few scant tickets left for those of you who might be tuning in who want to buy a ticket. And I'm also a co-organizer for WordCamp Los Angeles, which comes up here in September. And yeah, I got my first core contributions into 4.9.6, so I'm super excited about that. That happened this week, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Always good to have you on. Rick, I haven't seen you in let's see here. It's been a couple hours, right?
Yeah, it's been
I was on the show yesterday over on WP Blab, so thank you for coming back and hanging out with us. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, so I'm Rick Solari. Thanks for having me back on the show. I miss all you guys. Sad face.
Yes.
But miss.
You really shouldn't. You shouldn't.
You really shouldn't. So I am a media producer. I help with consulting in various different aspects of media, from video clips, content, to social media impressions, and a little bit of everything in the WordPress community as well. I was an organizer back in the day and going to start getting back into the role of that, hopefully soon. I'm here in Miami, Florida. I'd show you guys a picture of my little Miami backdrop, but it's too bright. But yeah, it's going to be fun today. We got some good stuff going on.
Awesome. Good to have you on. Russ, what's up, man? It's been a little bit. What's going on?
You know, up until contributing to WordCamp 4.9, Leo and I had a lot in common. I'm the Las Vegas Leo. Like, I do WordCamps and meetups and organize stuff, and I'm a consultant as well. We just found out we're having baby number 2, my man. So that's why I haven't been on the show.
Gosh, someone's been busy.
You know, I'm watching George with all your woodworking, and that's what I had to do.
Hey, how's it going? Say, tell us about yourself.
Not gonna go there, and
it went there.
You guys, I don't have any wood to whittle, so I can't help you with all of that. We have none of that in common. But who am I? It's a good question. We should all ask ourselves that.
You're John Valjean.
I am John Valjean. No,
Who am I?
I am Say Reed of ye old Say Reed Media. I make WordPress, teach WordPress, preach WordPress, and that gets harder to say like every week. I don't know why that is. That's Preach.
Awesome.
Moving on.
Steve.
Can I get a capital P?
I'm Steve Zangen. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress Meetup. I'm also the lead organizer for WordCamp Orange County, which is 3 weeks from tomorrow.
Dang, that's crazy.
That means my birthday is 3 weeks away.
It is. You're a Gemini.
Zach,
that explains everything.
Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yes, sir. Hey, guys. Welcome. Happy to be here. This is Matteo Ziff as well. He's our CEO of Jewel. So we're a WordPress development tool, and that's Joule spelled Joule, like the unit of work or the unit of energy, not the little vaporizer smoke thing that people are all into these days.
Wait, so you guys are development tools?
Yes, development tools. Yes.
Make sure I heard you right.
Yes. So yeah, happy to be here. Happy to be on the show. Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. Well, good to have you on. I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me over at Jason Tucker on Twitter. My website is jasontucker.blog, and I do this show as well as another show, WP Blab, which happened yesterday. So feel free to go take a look at that. We talked about social media marketing and stuff, and Rick was on talking about how comedy and social media marketing works. So feel free to go take a look at that over at wpwatercooler.com. All right. So let's talk a little bit about this latest release and kind of some of the things that happened with it. Who wants to kind of go over kind of the all of the happenings?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yes,
Jason,
it wants to.
Jason, is it you that posted the blog post about whether this is a minor release or major release?
Yeah.
That was a very interesting read. I like that.
Yeah.
I'll post it in the show notes.
Okay.
Well, basically, there is a lot of Twitter, not just on Twitter, but there was Twitter in the WordPress community about the recent release 4.9.6 and all of the fun stuff that was shoved under the hood in this particular minor release. And there was a bit of a hullabaloo about whether or not changes of this nature should be put into a release such as 4.10 as opposed to the traditional 4.9 being the last thing. And a lot of the controversy was because we're holding out WordPress 5.0 for Gutenberg. So people are just really kind of upset about that. And the reason they were upset about the minor release is because it's an automatic update. And so a lot of folks thought that there was too much stuff to have in an automatic update.
So let's backtrack. So the way auto updates work is anything that is after 2 dots, right? So if it's 4.9.x, if your updates are set to auto update, it will just roll out automatically, right? And so the controversy,
2 T's.
I put in air quotes for those who are listening on audio only. The controversy is that there was those .x releases are for security patches, very minor code updates, because it's going to roll out. If you've got it set to auto update, it's just going to roll out for you whether you like it or not. It's just going to be there. And so with this much code that's going into it, it could cause problems on your website if it's not been tested with whatever else you're running on your website.
Let's be real. If you have crappy plugins and themes.
Well, and
but that's what
yes,
it really means.
That's one thing, but it's not even crappy plugins. It might just be plugins or themes that haven't been updated for this particular release, right?
Well,
they may be They may work perfectly fine with 4.9.5, right? But there may be something that conflicts with something that's in your theme, and not all theme developers are on the same release schedule.
That's also part of the controversy, which is like normally, like if it's a big change like 5.0, everybody will go and test their plugin. But we thought that this was a minor release, so I didn't do my due diligence before this thing came out. Technically, my plugin could be out of compliance. Like, I think that's the huge thing for me.
Well, and I think the big problem here is, and I, by the way, helped contribute to the 4.9.6 release, and I think it's a really big deal, and I'm really happy that it's out there, and I think we have a lot to do to talk about this. And of course, Soft Plugin, I did do a talk about GDPR and some of the things that why you should care about it on this show a couple weeks ago. And GDPR actually hits the real world a week from today. We're 7 days away. This is a really big deal. The fact that it's not a major release means that people are going to be like, yeah, I'm just going to update this and ignore it. Plugin devs, theme devs, people aren't going to pay attention as much as I want them to, as much as I think we need them to.
So even though you were on the 4.96 train, you also are maybe of the idea that it should have been a larger release cycle.
But we can't call it 4.10 for other reasons, and we can't call it 5.0
technically for historical reasons. That was the actual reason.
What other reasons? Yeah,
historical reasons that they don't go past 4.9.
From what
it says.
The reason is that WordPress has always just followed decimal system, where there's nothing special about 5.0 apart from being the one that came after 4.9, which so we're not
except this year. Well, except this year. So there is something
Well,
special about 5.0.
yeah,
That's why
but-
we're all waiting for it. Like freaking
Right, but we're not doing semantic versioning, which means that like that's a major version change. Our major version is this after the first decimal point.
And to be frank, like I believe people aren't going to stop and give it the attention it needs. Plugin developers, theme developers, and the people who want to actually use the new privacy policy tool that we just spent literally the last 4 or 5 months building and coming up with a reasonable solution for. So the hard part is I want people to read and care about this, but now that it's a minor release, it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. And that's hard, you know? So at the same time, I think the people who have helped contribute to the release have done a very good job getting the word out. And I think it's our responsibility in the community to really look at this and call it a major minor release, because that's what it is. It's not an enhancement. It's not a bug fix. It's a set of new components that have been added to WordPress that actually now have a new component team that we're building called the privacy team. Like this is not a small thing. This is actually a really big deal that's part of WordPress now.
George, mute yourself.
Yeah. I'll just put away my wood.
No, I just
Put away your wood, George.
wait. I just
He's just gonna tuck it under real quick.
something important is said, and then all of a sudden you see George going.
George
Close the
blowing his wood in the background. You know, like,
This
Come
episode
on,
of WP
Say.
Water Cooler is
that
brought
was
to you
real.
by-
I didn't do anything.
Faces
That
in
was
the
a real
church,
thing.
Say. Come on, ease up.
That's a real thing you did. That's all I have
Oh
to
my goodness. All right,
Anyway,
so
Leo, you're right.
Thanks.
Okay, Leo's right. Moving
I
on.
can go now.
So WP Engine is actually I think they're giving people over the weekend to test before just forcing the update on production. So I mean, in terms of a hosting platform that normally whenever a security thing is released, it's usually updated automatically. They are aware that this is kind of a big thing and people need to test. So at least they're kind of being proactive about it, right?
Well, and I want to call this out because I don't think this is about testing per se. I actually think this is more about understanding. This new component itself isn't really breaking anything else. It's actually pretty self-contained. And in many ways, there's actually really decent criticism that some people have said that maybe this new component should have been released as a plugin. Maybe, you know, call it a must-use plugin. If people really don't want this thing, I think it's going to break, you know, don't necessarily throw it inside of all of core. But that being...
That's the other controversy, right? Is you may run a site that may never run up against GDPR concerns, right? I may have a site that only has US users
Or local
Right.
sites. Local
so
sites.
I should be able to opt in or opt out of this.
But there are various privacy laws that do affect American businesses that,
So-
regardless of whether you are affected by GDPR or not, this is just the excuse for us to start talking about this as a community.
Totally get it, but it should be my choice as a developer, right? Whether I want this or not in my site.
Choice is an important freedom.
It's also a paradox.
I mean,
Give you the freedom to not worry about this and just have it work for you.
Sorry.
I think this is also something where you can create your own privacy policy page and just add it to one of your menus and hit update, and it does need to be a whole feature with its own settings page. I mean, I think it could be that easy, and I agree with Steve. I should be able to opt out of this, or just say like, yeah, I'll take this version, but I don't want this thing on.
yeah, I mean, there's plugins out there that will do the GDPR stuff, supposedly, that you would just install and it would make a privacy page for you, and it would let you do some Mad Libs to put your name in there, and you know, all that fun stuff. I myself don't sell anything outside of the US because I don't sell anything, and I don't really collect anybody's data that's outside the US, so I'm not entirely sure how
But you know,
how to go about that.
the problem with this is not about whether or not you are intentionally collecting people from the European Union's data. It's that someone from the European Union can come to the watercolor site and sign up for it, and you don't even know. And then technically, next Saturday, they can sue you. So like that, it's the big unknown. I've done a lot of, thanks to Leo, I've done a lot of research about this. Which, by the way, I was calling it the GDRP for a really long time, which was really hilarious. you know, it's really untested. And that is, you know, it's this brand new law that provides a lot of new legal rights that has not been tested in any courts, European courts or US courts. So no one's really sure how this is going to impact anybody. Like, is there going to be a giant, you know, lawsuit spree that someone goes on, you know, just going and signing up for everything and then suing everybody for 4% of, you know, their income or whatever it is. And that's, I think, what the importance of it is, because when you own a global website and you operate that, you're not in control of that. And so I think it's really important. There are thousands and thousands of business owners out there who have no idea that this is even remotely a thing. And if they ever even did hear about it, it would be something that they would not even consider because of what you just said, Jason, like, oh, I don't deal with people from Europe, so who cares? It doesn't matter. So I think it's vital to bring it into the core for that reason, because it makes WordPress safe for all of its users. And it's doing a service that something like Shopify and Weebly can do inherently. And so it would put WordPress at an extreme disadvantage if that was you know, everyone's already like, oh, WordPress is unsafe or whatever it is. But I have dogs now, so I'm going to stop talking.
You're right, Sam.
Well, the reason why I was saying it the way that I was saying it was more along the lines that I was trying to represent our typical listeners or viewers of the show, because I've had people send in emails saying, hey, what do I do with this? And, you know, especially after Leo just brain dumped on us like two full episodes worth of it, and everyone's just kind of like going, whoa, I don't understand what's going on here. You know, it's tough. It's tough, and I've had too many folks come and ask me. I work at a church, and you know, we don't sell anything, and I don't have to deal with any of that sort of stuff, and I'm not collecting data off of anybody like that. So I haven't really had to work.
First of all, if you have Google Analytics, you're collecting data off of people, and second of all, it doesn't matter if you're selling anything or not. It only matters what you're doing with the data that comes to your site. And you know, I mean, Google Analytics is doing its thing. You know, the deluge of privacy policy updates from all the major services has, you know, started in earnest. But you know, most people are just completely ignoring those. So really, for me, putting it in core is a protection for WordPress's users that I appreciate. And I really do agree with you, Leo, that not making it part of a larger release, just being like, oh, well, we're breaking rules for Gutenberg. Why don't we break rules for GDRP or GDPR, or however the hell you say it?
Right.
And put those in, you know, like I think it also should have been in a larger release for what you're talking about, so that it would have been like, hey, major release, privacy, you should care. It would get a banner. It could have a little bit of information. Like, we took like a half step to protecting users, but didn't take that other step to educate users about what they should do with that information.
So
well, I would rather they would have just said, hey, with 4.6 or 4.9.6, also install this plugin called, you know, contributor or whatever, and let us play around with it there. I would have much rather had that as well.
So I want to call this out because this is a bigger, larger, more complicated problem. A lot of what GDPR means for theme developers, for plugin developers, for WordPress as a whole, and a lot of the effort that we put into the project isn't just necessarily a privacy policy builder. It's also this conversation around transparency, around privacy. It's documentation for theme developers, it's documentation for plugin developers, and all of these really complicated, innocuous ways that people don't think they're collecting data, but using data in ways that I think really matter. And most people don't realize that they are complicit in allowing people to collect data in ways they aren't supposed to be. Most people don't realize that data is extremely sensitive. And we exist in this world where people don't recognize that data is extremely valuable. I've spoken quite deeply about this and for much longer and much broader about this, and I don't want to give it any short justice, but I think it's really important for us to understand that GDPR is responsibility for everyone, even if you don't necessarily affect if European businesses don't affect you. And to get to the heart of it, like, we should probably be transparent about these things. So Jason, if you work for a church and you don't collect data, you should have a policy that says, we're doing good things. We don't intend to do evil things. We don't sell anything. We might use analytics in the background. If you think this is a problem, please opt out. Like, you should have a process so that people can understand that data. That's really what this whole conversation is about. It's more about privacy. It's more about transparency about policies. It's more about honesty honesty and good things as opposed to bad things. And I can't say how awful it is. It's just sad that we don't do this.
And it's also not just a privacy policy, though. It is also that key part of the opting out, allowing users to both access and view their data and remove their data if they want. And that, so, you know, you could have a privacy policy, but it's that action and being able to do that that's really important. And that's the thing that affects developers and the system as a whole and theme developers and whatnot.
It's like when you go onto a site and they have the cookie box that pops up in the corner. It says like, we collect cookies, blah, 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 cookie. And you just look at it and go, okay, go away. And you click on it because we live in the US, we don't care anyhow. So we just go, whatever. And so because of that, you're getting those types of things that we've been seeing. And also just this, you know, you said deluge that is totally apt here. The idea that this a zillion freaking emails got sent into everybody's email boxes with the word GDPR. If I do a search for GDPR in my my Outlook or in my Gmail, I have a zillion of them, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with all this stuff? Am I supposed to go to every single one of these sites, and is there a call to action I need to do? Like, what is it I need to actually do to make this happen? So when you have people that are running their cat blogs and they may have one form on their site that's asking for a username or asking for a person's name and their email address to get added to a mailing list, they don't know what to do.
Well, Steve, you were saying that there should be an option to like opt out, right? For a developer. Like, what are the cons? Like, what are the worst things about this that could be potentially, you know, an eye opener to developers or those that are running their websites that don't really understand what this update could be, you know, like, or somebody else could answer that question, because we're talking about the benefits, about transparency, about pretty much adding documentation, but we're not adding anything to the offside of what could potentially happen on the downside.
I don't see any cons. I agree with you. I'm in the camp that this should have been a plugin, right? This doesn't necessarily need to be in core, at least for now.
Gutenberg is not in core and it's a plugin. So yeah. I agree with Steve on this.
Same thing would happen with the REST API, right? So it should have, at least in my opinion, at this phase been a plugin leading up until it eventually gets put into core.
That would have followed the traditional history.
Yep.
Yeah. The con that I see right now is that there's a bunch of people that attend my meetup and they're going to go put a privacy policy on their website and they're not really sure what they're looking at. They're just going to kind of do a search replace and put their name and hope they're covered. And what if that gets them in more trouble than you know they would have never been in had this not come out? I mean, that's my biggest concern.
I mean, that's a valid point.
The thing is, the laws that exist in the United States outside of GDPR still expect you to have things like privacy policies.
I'm not arguing that, but I'm going to go copy. It's like I'm going to go copy something off of a tutorial and put it in my functions file and hope it doesn't break my site. I feel like I'm doing the same thing with this privacy policy because I'm not a lawyer, nor do I have the money to go consult with a lawyer. And, you know, like Jason said, I have 15 different emails here saying like, are you GDPR compliant? And they're all saying something different. It's scary and it's confusing, and I don't want somebody to get affected by this and get discouraged and say WordPress sucks now.
Well, that's the real fear, I think, and that's when this this kind of inner bickering amongst the WordPress development community, where it's like, oh, this sucks. It should have been 4.10. It should have been 4.9. You know, it's disregarding the community-based, solution-based stuff here. And I think that this happened really quickly. And I think there's a lot of hard feelings that are happening over Gutenberg. And those two things existing at the same time is causing a little bit of a lot of discomfort for a lot of developers. And with all the stuff that's going on with Shopify, you know, and WordPress being like, you know, it's turning 15 and all this stuff is happening at once. And people are like, is this the end? Should I jump ship? Do I, you know, like, what do I do? You know, I feel like it's creating that, and it's creating that atmosphere for small business owners and people who are just using WordPress for websites also.
And
it's definitely chaos. It was inconsistent. I will agree with all those things, right? And you're right. You're identifying a perfect storm, but this isn't the end.
I don't think it's the end. I just think that's the atmosphere.
I don't know that I've run across anybody with that perception that this is the end.
So that post that I shared and that you shared as well, Steve, from Satellite WP. If you don't read anything except for this one section where they talk about the word translation, if you just do Command F, Control F on your computer, search for the word translation real quick in that document. There were 200 different translations that needed to be done in a document like this, where everything is very legalese, very legalese. And now you had to have folks that attempt, that go and translate words like, I want to, click on this button, and if you fill out this form, it does this, like these very specific type of strings. And now you have this thing where it's like, here's a bunch of legalese I want you to translate in a whole bunch of different languages. That had to have been daunting. That in itself had to have been daunting. And just looking at what Jim Francois was saying on here was like, I can't, it's like this was crazy. That's a lot of stuff to translate.
It's a lot of developers and stuff who are doing, this is kind of to Russ's point, it's a lot of developers and people who are doing what is technically should be some legal work. And that is a very gray area that we're in right now, because we have all these developers trying to be in compliance with something that is a law that's not even a law here. So there's not a ton of U.S. information except for coming from providers.
But there are American laws that affect this stuff, and this stuff it matters deeply. And like I look at this and I say that like our responsibility here.
We're not arguing that. What I'm saying is like it's like when you go on Facebook and you're like, hey, I need recommendations for like the best lawyer, and like you get 20 people saying the same thing. Now I have all these plugins that translate, maybe it says something different, and depending on the page and the short code that it lands on, like I could be in or out of compliance because of the translation, and that's a scary thing. And not only that, it's a translation across plugins and themes and core itself. There's 3 layers here that need to be translated.
The way I look at it, go ahead, say.
I was just going to say it is a scary thing, but I think this is also coming to terms with where we are at right now with websites and the internet. And, we use the internet like it's just this tool of nothing, when it is a huge deal. This data is a huge deal. It has influenced major elections. Whatever page you're on, as a developer that metrics and advertising and demographics influences people's decisions. What you see influences that. So regardless of any sort of greater political situation going on, as developers, we know that data can be used in a lot of different ways. And we are all playing with this stuff like it's just toys. And maybe this is part of, growing up. So it's not just, build a website on the fly and whatever, and you're not responsible for something that has, potential international commerce laws. Like I have clients who set up websites to sell things to people in other countries and get in huge problems without even realizing that they're doing so, because they're suddenly part of international commerce just by flinging up a site,
That's the key part that I think that people don't realize about GDPR, about data privacy, about setting up web, e-commerce stores. This is the same basic level of concern here. If you're actually doing things that require scale, if you're not a mommy blogger, if you're doing things that are bigger, if you're doing things that are hard.
Mommy bloggers.
There are some huge mommy bloggers too, which I love. But anyway, if you need an accountant, and if you have multiple employees, if you have any sort of scale, if you have a website that's really large in traffic and you're doing all kinds of things, like GDPR definitely affects you. Privacy laws definitely affect you. Understanding this stuff definitely affects you. And part of the WordPress core's contribution here is to help bring that conversation to the forefront for people who are transitioning. Like, I don't think we should have a plug and play solution. I think every solution is different, and the privacy policies that you need to add are going to be custom to your website. But at the same time, I feel strongly in saying that we need to have more friction. We need to have people understand the effects of what we do, and we need to have people not just be complicit with having data collection happen in the background. We have to change the normal to be able to get to where we should be going.
I wholeheartedly agree that, like, if you are a website owner, you should be, even though you're not a website builder, you own a website, it's an investment, you should be understand like who your host is and what your privacy policies are and things like this. I agree with that. I just think that, like, it's almost like now developers currently have this asynchronous way of developing. Like, we just have to keep learning this language as it rolls out. And now I kind of feel like we're forcing these people who just have a very simple site. Now they have to be asynchronous with WordPress. And it was like very sudden. And that's what I don't like about it.
I think this is difficult. This has been a difficult time for everyone because of what I said with Gutenberg and the GDPR. But I think that it's really about us all taking responsibility for educating our customers, educating our clients, educating ourselves. You know, we're dealing with real world big stuff that has a lot of value and is really kind of fragile technology. It just is, and we all need to be, I think, respectful of that.
I have a positive note.
Just one.
You have 30 seconds.
WordPress actually is probably the biggest advance, or sort of we've made the most effort in GDPR of any of the open source technologies that I've found. And this has actually been quite a bit of a controversy here. So like, even though we're debating and discussing and trying to figure out the right way to do this, we actually have done a lot that's leading the conversation around open source. And in fact, like, if you care about this deeply, there is a channel on Make WordPress. We want you to participate. This is the stuff that matters. If you think we're not going in the right direction, help us steer the ship. And I feel like we can do this together, and we will hopefully also help other projects to go beyond WordPress as well. And I appreciate the community here that's been able to care about this, because that's the end result. We want people to care.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Leo, for that. Thank you all for being on the show and hanging out with us and talking about this. I really appreciate it. Go over to our website at jpwatercooler.com. Click on the links there to subscribe. If you enjoyed this content, share it with somebody else. We'd really appreciate that. And definitely go back in our archives and check out the GDPR posts that we did. We did one where it was really great, where Leo came in and essentially did a WordCamp talk, which was just absolutely hilarious, being the first time we ever had something like that happen. And he keeps wanting to do more of these things, and I'm like, no, man, that's not what the water cooler is about. We don't show up at a water cooler with a PowerPoint. But but that was one of the things that we talked about. So definitely go take a look at that. And I appreciate all the time that you took out of your day to come out and hang out with us. So you have a good rest of your day. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.